The trade winds are blowing. Silly season is here. And what on earth will we do in the trade window without Dodoro? This is the Sash, definitely not the official podcast of the Essendon Football Club. I am your host, Rob, here with you for some off-season, banter is probably the way to put it. I don't think there's going to be any insights on this program. I'll give you the red-hot listeners, but hopefully some entertainment, hopefully a bit of fun, and while you all enjoy yourselves as we are on the verge of another trade window, we can give you something to enjoy. But joining me this evening is Joel. Hello, mate.
I thought this was a group therapy session, Robert. You've tricked me into turning up on this podcast. I didn't realise we were talking about trades. I thought there was a professional here. I think we're all going to get everything off our chest and, then go to Ibiza like we should do.
Yes. Look, we can definitely go to Ibiza after this podcast. And look, if you do things to get off your chest, I'm not going to stop you. I feel like I'm, pretty good at the moment. It's been enough period of time since Essendon's last lost a football match that I'm feeling okay about things, more so than others at the moment. But also joining us is James. Hello, mate.
Hello, Rob. Hello, Joel. Yeah, a little bit similar. 25 degrees here in Melbourne. Out for a walk this evening, and life was good. And then I saw your name pop up on my phone, Rob, and I remembered that I am an Essendon supporter, and things went south a little bit, but we were just laughing off air that we must have all been in the same boat of sort of enjoying not having to worry about the Dons, because we're a little bit behind the loop on all of the trade rumours and news, but I'm sure like all the other podcasts and radio channels at this time of the year, we can make a few things up and go from there.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny. I was having a little scroll through Twitter or X this evening, and for the listeners' sake, often at the end of footy season, I take a bit of a social media detox. I delete all the apps off my phone. I take a bit of a break from it all. It's a nice thing for me. But I was going through Twitter and I was looking at the what's his name? Adam Cooney's mega trades that he does every day, and firstly they are ridiculous. But I was literally sitting there being like, I should start posting my own fake ones of like Essendon mega trades. It's like, John Coleman's going to be back, Dick Reynolds back, Damien Cupido in, and maybe just do that every day for the rest of the trade window, because I reckon it'll get some traction, because that people believe anything these days.
I would like to believe it, very much so. Who the fuck is Jackson Pryor?
I was just thinking there's a couple of trade scenarios that I've seen coming out of Essendon that I wish were made up, but I don't think they are.
Yeah. I was saying to Joel off air that there's a real vibe around this trade window that you look at some of the big names getting floated about, like your Bailey Smiths, your Clayton Olivers, and they're just the guys who had gone to Geelong. And it feels like some of the other clubs are shopping at Coles and Woolies and some of the real, fancy independent supermarkets in the inner east of Melbourne. It just feels like the Dons are heading up Preston Market and Aldi for whatever scraps they can find.
Yeah. We're going to the bad Coles. Of those two Coles.
The bad Coles at Northcote Plaza.
That's
not
right.
to be confused with the good Coles.
That's right.
Which is where I try to do my shopping. But before we do jump into all things trade, boys, how are you all feeling living in a post-Brisbane flag era where Joe Danaher and Connor McKenna have premiership medals and our boys don't? And since I wrote that in the run sheet this morning, Joe Danaher has now, in fact, retired. I'll go to you first, James, because I did watch the grand final with Joel. So, firstly, how do you feel about it all? Were you rooting for a particular side more so than the others?
Neither way passionately. I was probably leaning more towards Brisbane winning, which I thought would be the consensus, but it seemed that wasn't the case. I know certainly in my work office it was dominated by people hoping Sydney would win, and there was a few Don supporters that I spoke to that were also hoping to see Sydney win. I don't know whether that was to see Joe Danaher not win one, whether that had anything to do with it. Certainly not from my side. I couldn't really care less. And it was more really around whether he was going to retire, and that's obviously been confirmed today. In terms of the game itself, I was probably just hoping for a close one, and we didn't get that. either. Sydney scars of 2022 came back to haunt them. So it was a bit of a fizzer in the end, and the last half was a bit of a moral in the end for Brizzy. But I wasn't passionately hoping for one way or the other.
And yourself, Jolly, I obviously sat with you during the game, and I know most of your cheers were aimed at the 1,000 multis you had running at the same time. But did you have a particular preference to it all?
Yeah, look, I was really hoping Brizzy would win. I've really enjoyed their footy, and then they've sort of done it the hard way, climbing through finals to make the grand final. And I think Sydney, I just weren't 100% convinced by them after the back half of the year. And I feel like I've hated Joe Danaher until grand final day, and then I was like, actually, I don't hate him anymore. I like Joe Danaher. I used to like him. He just obviously it was a shit situation when he left, and I was bitter for a while. But he was trying to get out of the limelight. Obviously, he's living a very different lifestyle. He's retiring at the age of 30 when he could go on and earn more money. So you kind of have to give it to him. That he probably ended up moving for the right reasons back in the day. And he's avoided a lot of fucking disaster by doing so too. So you can't hold it against him.
Yeah, I think, I know in the time I was pretty filthy about it. I'm sure I aired plenty of grievances on this podcast about it. But as time's gone on, I don't begrudge Joe as much as other players who've left the club, because I do sort of understand why he left. It was less about Essendon as the club itself doing it wrong. We were a shit place, and I do think his medical mismanagement at the time was one of the reasons he did go. But if you want to get out of the fishbowl that is Melbourne footy scene, then I can understand that. This is a guy who said himself that he'd rather go to Meredith Music Festival than be playing on the G in front of 100,000 people. So, but no one's going to pay you close to $1 million a year to go to Meredith and, eat and do God knows what while you're there. So, yeah, look, I don't begrudge him that much. And kind of the same with Connor McKenna. He really got hounded out of footy by Tom Brown, who I'll happily say is an awful human being on this podcast. And amongst others, you remember that little COVID sort of false positive that happened, and there was videos of him in the news spitting and all that stuff. And then he was just like, I'm going back to Ireland. I'm sick of this. And then he decided that, like Joey, didn't want to come back to the fishbowl. And it was Brisbane that was there. So I understand why there's lots of Essendon supporters who weren't happy to see those two get premiership medals, but I've moved on from it. Certainly more so than Essendon players who've moved to clubs like Carlton, for instance, which I think is something you should not be doing. And I guess for listeners as well, I think I was leaning towards Brisbane. I did like their story a little bit more. I really like Chris Fagan, and not being a coach who's played at the highest level, I think is a really cool story as well. And I don't know if there's just a bit of hubris about the way that the Swans carried themselves throughout the year. And I don't know, Tom Papley went pretty hard at us when they beat us earlier in the year. So it was nice to see him cop it a bit going the other way. So anyway, let's move on to other matters. More importantly, yes, Essendon matters. It's actually the Crichton Medal is on as we speak, fellas. I was watching just a little bit before. How many votes will Zach Merritt win by, James? That is the question.
I forget what our format is, because I know that every club does a different format. But whatever the maximum is, let's say it's a Patrick Cripps style win. I'll work it that way.
Yeah. Is there any chance we see a surprise in this?
No chance. Absolutely not. Not to win. I feel like ours is quite. I feel like he's going to win in the hundreds. I feel like that's the way our voting sort of works.
Yeah.
Even if it's 3-2-1, he's a chance of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be a landslide. I do know that one of the most most improved is one of the awards they give out. Has Sammy Durham got that locked up, or do you reckon that Jai Caldwell might run him for the most improved? What do you reckon, James?
There you too. I probably lean more towards Durham. I think his sudden rise was a little bit more dramatic than maybe Caldwell, who had shown really strong signs through the midfield the year prior. Obviously, he took a really big step, but I think no one really expected the season that Durham had to occur, and he obviously made that move into the midfield as well, and looked like he belonged. So I think Durham would win the most improved, and Caldwell would probably be your runner-up in the actual best and fairest, in my opinion. Although, in saying that, I've been really strong on Caldwell's performances all throughout the season, but Brad Scott has seemed to miss him a few times in the coaches' votes. Does that then play a role in how the voting works in the best and fairest? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. We don't know what the coaches are looking for. There's obviously the things we see as supporters, which we like, but there might be a particular role or cog in the chain that they're really, really keen on, and if someone's doing that role, then they might get votes. So that's that. Let's move on to the trade window, fellas. That is the main reason, of course, why we're here. I'll ask you off the top, Joel, what is your expectation of this trade window silly season?
Okay, so what I probably expect to happen is not necessarily what I would want to happen, but I think the trade window in particular, I think we'll probably get a couple of subpar players that probably aren't going to be 22, starting 22 players, and maybe they fill a hole here or there and they can come in and out, but I can't imagine us landing anyone that's going to really change the makeup for our team. What I would like, which may happen, is the exit of some players, and we can go into specifics, but I'll hear from you guys first before we go to specifics, that actually improves our draft hand. I think, if I was saying what I wanted, it was a much improved draft hand to hit the drafts this year, and I don't see the point of bringing in a half in, half out 22, 23-year-old when we can go to the draft and try and have a crack at bringing in a group of players together.
Yeah, pretty similar. My expectations and wants are pretty much identical. My understanding of this draft is it's extremely strong. We've obviously got the guaranteed bid on Keiko, which we expect to be relatively early. We've obviously got pick 8 as well. So my expectations is that we take potentially a couple of top 10 picks to the draft. We've also got 28 there as well. Whether that gets eaten up by a bid, hopefully not. And then I expect us to offload some fringe players as well to pick up some later picks from the likes of maybe a Richmond, who are probably looking to offload those and get up the draft as much as they can, given some of the quality that is going out of there. I'm not really interested, like Joel alluded to, in some of the players that we're talking about, and we can jump into that after this. I just feel like that is not going to progress us forward, and I'd rather go to the draft and take a shot at a pick 50 or a pick 60. You never know. The likes of Zach Merritt have come from there. I'd rather roll the dice than pick up someone that we've seen and, in my opinion, don't feel like they're going to progress us forward.
Yeah. I think that's it. Like, yeah, my expectation is just to bolster our draft hand, but I wouldn't say no to us picking up a more mature player if the price is right. Like, I think that's something we learned from last season, where we obviously went pretty hard at free agency. This year, it doesn't look like there's as many free agents available, at least ones that we go after and could afford. But if the right thing's there and we can get a player for not much, like I am okay with that. But again, it really just depends on who it is, and I guess it sort of flows into what is the needs. You go, what are our key needs in terms of positions, in terms of roles and stuff like that? I think the two obvious ones is a small forward and also some, run and carry off the half back line. We're obviously going to pick up Keiko. He's that. But again, are we expecting that kid to play round one? I don't know. And then you look at the sort of half backs who are available. I guess maybe Jackson Pryor's one that you just mentioned off the top there, Joel. Who is he? Is that a guy who can play that sort of role? Again, could not tell you, because he played 4 games this season and I didn't watch any of them. So, yeah, that's sort of the position we're in now. It's like, well, is the kid out of the draft going to be the one who plays that role in round one, or is it going to be a mature one?
Yep.
Knowing Brad Scott, I tend to feel like they're going to take the safer option and pick someone who's been around the system for a little bit, unfortunately. But I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong.
I think you know, what we have seen in recent years, obviously small forwards have become, they've always been important, but, you know, premiership winning teams are very strong with forward pressure and small forwards of late. And we've seen players like Ginnivan or like Nick Watson who have come in and had an impact immediately in their first season and in their second season. So if Strawberry Shortcake'o is the person that we think he is and that is the hype person that we've got at the moment, like maybe he can have an impact straight away, and maybe we want that partnership with Caddy to form immediately. And like, you know, James, I feel like James and I have been in agreement on this multiple times this year. I think like whilst we are wanting success for Essendon, I think the ability to maybe like build a cohesive team over the next couple of years of new draft picks and unfortunately bite the bullet and go somewhat ground up is maybe the way to go to actually see success. And, you know, we've had Brad Scott, we've had this, you know, the 8-year plan that was spoken about. He's, you know, kept a lid on things all through this year. So I kind of feel like he's been trying to tell the club that we're not as good as we think we are in a subtle way that doesn't piss off the majority of Essendon supporters for a little while. And, you know, I think hopefully that's the direction we take, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's it. Like, unfortunately for Essendon, is we're in this hard position where I think most of us would agree that we do need to take a long-term approach, but because of how long we have been shit for and how starved of success the fan base is, there needs to be those little bits, those sugar hits to just keep the thing going. Because we've got a pretty rusted on fan base, but every year that goes by, not seeing something, you know, there are people dropping off, as we know. We've certainly discussed this year, and it's a hard position to be in. And, you know, I watched just a little bit of the Crichton then, and before you guys jumped on this call with me, and Barham was sort of speaking about that as like, you know, we've put all the things in place that need to be put in place over the last 2 years. Now it's time to actually start seeing stuff from there. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that next year is the year that it's really going to show. You know what I mean? Like, all right, you've been professional for 2 off seasons. Great. Like, Geelong players have been doing it for a decade or more. You know what I mean? So it's not just going to be a really short fix, unfortunately, which will upset a lot of people. But, you know, that's just what we've got to do. I reckon we jump into some questions, fellas. Our faithful premium members in the Discord have provided us with some questions around the trade window, and I think this will direct a lot of our conversation. And then if there's any particular players or things you guys want to mention after that, I'm sure we can get into it. I'll take the first one off the top. This one's from John Boy, and he says, from a distance, what do you think our strategy is? I guess we kind of just spoke about it just a little bit there, but yeah, I do think the strategy is to bolster the draft hand. In an ideal scenario, I think you're taking your pick 8, then you're taking Kako with a couple of, you know, with some points, use some other picks, and then hopefully a third player after that. I think that is what I would like to see happen, is that they're taking 3 players at the draft. I should have probably checked what our list size is at the moment, because I do know that Jaden Davey, Will Setterfield and Sam Wiedemann are still out of contract. So what we do in the off-season may affect that, but I can't recall off the top of my head. So wait for how many spots are available. But if Heppel's gone, Kelly's gone, Hine was delisted. Who else was delisted?
Baldwin.
And
there was one other in that patch of 3, wasn't there?
I think there was a third one I'm forgetting. So yeah, so there's at least 5 spots there. One of which may be a rookie spot. Wanganeen, there you go. So there's certainly spots there. But yeah, I think that's our strategy. And then if there is a affordable player who's been around, they may look to pick up. But yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing any, you know, deadline day coups of Clayton Oliver or Christian Petrarca or something like that happening. I don't think that's going to be happening this year. James, do you want to read the next question out?
Yeah, sure. From Romeo Mike, is it worth forcing the Draper trade now to Adelaide to see if he wants to commit to the club long term? Of course, he's a free agent come 2025. The way I'll answer that is I'm relatively confident, touch wood, dare I say it, that Draper's not interested in moving. From my understanding, he is extremely loyal to the Essendon Football Club and is grateful that we took a chance on him and wants to repay the faith. So I actually don't think he'll be leaving. If, hypothetically, we thought that he would be interested in that, then, yeah, logic says that we would do that prior to free agency where we're really not going to get compensated the way that we'd hope to be. But, yeah, the way I'll answer that is I don't think he's leaving, so I'm not going to be forcing a trade.
I think, I do get the vibe that he is more likely to be staying than going, Sam Draper, but I guess you'd run a real risk that if you did force him out now to look for some value, that you're left in a position where you've got Nick Bryan, who has played, 4 games at max for an AFL season with incredibly low minutes, and then you've got Goldie, and then you've got Vicentini, who is miles away from being AFL ready. So, yeah, you're really conceding that you're just not going to be doing anything anytime soon without a, competent, combative ruckman. Not that I don't think Nick Bryan will be that at some point, but yeah, I don't think he's ready to be a number one ruck at age 23 next season, rucking 20-odd plus games with, big minutes. So, yeah, I think we'd be a little bit silly to trade him out unless we're going full rebuild. But I don't think that's the way. Jolly, do you want to go next?
So there's a couple in here that I think we've maybe already ticked off, but Gin Phones has asked, is there any more news around whether Lav will be traded? And I have none, so I just thought I might as well ask to see.
You've got nothing.
Obviously,
I haven't looked. Yeah, I think the Laverty one was interesting because obviously him and Stringer have got the same manager, and there was that sort of little bit of press about it at the same time. Because they're both in a similar situation where they've got a contract for next year, but that's nothing else after that. They obviously want more, but the club's not willing to offer that. And I think the thing with Laverty as it stands is I don't know if anyone's really that interested. Like there was a bit of chat about St Kilda, but that's just disappeared completely. Not to say that they couldn't come back into the conversation, but I feel like if there was reasonable discussions from someone would be hearing about it because, I'm sure that manager would be pretty keen to get as much money as you possibly can for a guy like Laverty. But yeah, my expectation is Laverty will be playing for Essendon in 2025.
I pulled up the free agency players for 2025 just to confirm that Sam Draper was in fact a free agent then. And there's 2 other names at Essendon underneath him for 2025. And interestingly, that's Laverde and Stringer. So I didn't realise that they were going into free agency and whether that's playing a part in the management trying to extend beyond there with the question mark hanging over both in terms of the interest for them and whether anyone would want to actually pick them up. So interesting to see both of those names next to Draper.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a bit of smoke and mirrors from the manager. This one's from Carl in the Plains. Are you considering trading out Mert? He barely made it onto the field and hasn't hit his triggers. It's a possibility, although I don't think there's much value for Mert from other podcasts. I'm not sure how someone as dark as Mert would go on other Essendon podcasts. I think he'd probably just derail them completely. Though he does that, but I will spill a secret that. Dear Murdy boy, sometime over probably the next 5 or 6 weeks, will be becoming a father. So we may not see much of Murdy next season, but don't get me wrong, I'm sure we'll get flogged by 10 goals one week and he'll creep his way into the studio.
I think there might be some room for the Prince of Darkness to sneak in at least once during the year.
Yeah,
he might take up a new gig at White Lady Funerals on their podcast or something like that. I feel like,
Do they have a?
I don't know. They probably don't have a podcast, but I mean, I'm trying to think of where his, if a football club's not going to pick him up, what sort of organisation might?
A funeral home doing a podcast. It's like, yeah, we've just buried a few people this week.
I'm still thinking about Strawberry Short Keiko.
Yeah. Let's go, Straubs.
That's good from you, Joel. Very good from you, Joel. He does not look. I'll tell you what, he does not look very strawberry at all. He's got very dark hair. That young boy. So not very strawberry vibe.
Maybe
who wants to take the next one?
What do we got here? So I like this one from Drip Lord. Thoughts on the potential re-signing of, well, he says Weed and Setters, so I'm going to throw Weed out. Let's just not even think about that. But thoughts on the potential re-signing of Setterfield?
It's a hard one. I like Will Setterfield, and I see what he offers in terms of being a bit of a bigger body compared to some of the guys we've got at the moment. But I think he's very slow, and I think there may be a little bit of concern with his knee. And look, if everyone's healthy and you're picking your midfield 4 or 5, however many you want to put in there, I've got Merritt, Parrish, Caldwell, Durham all in front of him. And then you're looking at, well, do you give a Hobbs or a Sardis a chance, or do you play Setterfield? It's like, it's good for depth if you've got some injury problems, don't get me wrong. But, I think most of those names I've mentioned, I'd rather play in front of him. I'm not sure about you, James.
I think, I agree with what you've said there. I'd rather give at this point a Hobbs or a Sardis to go on ball, because you're not going to play Setterfield anywhere else other than on ball. And then I guess the writing's on the wall a bit for Setterfield in terms of the links to Finn McGuinness. You'd think that he would almost take Setterfield's spot. I can't see both of those guys definitely not being played in the same side, but really probably not even being on the same list. So you'd think that, well, the way I've read it is that the interest in Finn McGuinness is to potentially delist Setterfield. That's how I look at that. So I'd expect if McGuinness comes, Setterfield's probably out the door.
Yeah, I was having a chat to my cousin who's a big Hawk supporter about Finn McGuinness, and he was like, look, he's just a pretty standard sort of midfielder, but offers, and you can see sometimes where players go off and get a new opportunity, a new club, they have a bit of a rebirth in a sense, and with that are able to grow and potentially go to a new level. But I think if Finn McGuinness has one strength, fellas, and I think this is something Essendon players would get around, is that Finn McGuinness absolutely belts the shit out of Nick Dacos on a regular basis. Now, if I told you we could bring in a bloke to play him twice a year when we play Collingwood and he'll belt Nick Dacos into oblivion, I think we'd all take it, to be honest. So
Done.
So
get him in. Next question, James.
Where do we have one here? I guess we've sort of covered it, but I guess this is probably to the extreme from Matty Lloyd 18. Are we better just ripping the Band-Aid off, trading whoever we can get capital for, and loading up on draft picks? Thoughts?
I mean, not to the extent of, like I say, Richmond, for example. But I would be wanting to hit this draft reasonably. Like, I would be wanting to take minimum 3 players in this draft, ideally, for mine, just because, I do think we're still a long way off it, and we know that Tassie is coming, and we do not want to be in a position in 2027 or 28 when it is, or both those years, where we need youth and there ain't much to get because Tassie's taking them all. So I would be quite comfortable with this year and potentially even next year taking a bit more youth on board to hopefully cover us through that window that we've still got plenty of players to develop, more so than your older plotters. But yeah, I don't think it's like a full Band-Aid rip. There's probably a few guys we signed this year and last year we wouldn't have kept if that was what we were going to do, I think. So, yeah. Anything to add, fellas?
Yeah, I agree. It can't be everyone, but I definitely think we need to be, as we've spoken about, building our draft hand.
Yep. Placey says, where are we going to find the picks for the strawberry Kako bid? I guess the sort of question is, who are the players that we would be looking to depart? Maybe we could sort of discuss the players who are potentially on their way out of the club. So Jake String is probably the biggest name of all this. And again, a bit of a division amongst the supporter base when you read stuff online about him. There's plenty of people who are like, get rid of him, happy to see him gone, but other people who go, hey, look, he kicked 42 goals for the year, he's a reliable forward. He's going to be hard to replace in that sense. Firstly, Joel, what's your thoughts on him going if he was to go, and if GWS, who seem like the likely suitor, were to go after him, what do you think his value is?
I'm in the camp of Jake Stringer leaving. I think it's very easy to have someone who performs really well on their own but doesn't contribute to the team. And, he wasn't always performing well. He did kick a lot of good goals, but he also kicked had some terrible missed set shots when we really needed him, and kind of went missing a lot when we needed him as well. And I just really feel like if we're trying to build long-term consistent culture and, we are taking a bit of a long-term approach to where our next premiership is, I think it's now's the time to get him out and to try and get some capital for him. Look, I think realistically he's maybe worth like a late second rounder, maybe. I mean, he did still kick 40-something goals, but I think that's probably what I would be thinking for. Maybe he's involved in a trade with Connor Stone, which is the GWS name that's kind of been floated. So maybe it's Connor Stone and a late second rounder or a third rounder or something like that, maybe. But yeah, I definitely don't think he's any higher than a late second rounder, probably.
Yeah. So when he came to Essendon, we took him we gave him pick 25 and pick 30. So 2 second rounders is what we got him for.
Shrewd, maybe.
Oh, I'm just getting first sunny day and hay fever is just kicking my ass right now. Absolutely kicking my ass. Other players who are on the potential exit. We spoke about Jane Laverty, but yeah, Dylan Shiel. It was very, very, very quiet about Dylan Shiel until about an hour ago, where suddenly there was a rumour that GWS are interested in him. So he would be returning back to Western Sydney. This will be good for all the people who Photoshop jerseys onto people, because they won't have to Photoshop a jersey onto Dylan Shiel because there's plenty available that you could use. It's a bit of a funny one, the fact that he'd go back to GWS, don't you think, James?
Yeah, I didn't have it on my radar at all. I thought St Kilda were heavily into Shiel, and then, like you said, there was really cricket since the end of the season, which was quite surprising because he actually came into the side and played quite well. So, if anything, I thought that interest would have risen post-season. But yeah, it was all really quiet, and then I was surprised to see the Giants looking into him. I'm not exactly sure why or what their needs are regarding a running midfielder. They seem to have them growing on trees there, and then obviously they've got their strong draft academy that seems to produce some pretty good talent as well. So I'm surprised they're picking up a player like Shiel, if they do, of course. The only thing that I can think of is obviously Shiel's a ultimate professional when it comes to his preparation and the way he trains. Maybe they're looking at bringing in someone like Shield to assist with that. But yeah, look, they're a strong side. They're a good club. Adam Kingsley seems like a really good coach. So yeah, a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, it is a strange one. But look, if they happen to take him and give us some picks, I would not say no. This one is from where is it? Sorry, this is from Suck Some Eggs. Great name. Should we cave to the current AFL meta, to use a gamer term, and trade off some of our tools like 2 metre Peter, Cox and Jones? So there was certainly a bit of a discussion after the grand final about Sydney's tall forwards and the lack of impact that there was from them. And a lot of the successful teams at the moment, whether it be Collingwood or even Hawthorn, have a real, fleet of small players, mid-sized players who can really apply that pressure, whereas we've seen that we've often have played a very tall team throughout the year. Cox and Jones on a wing, 2 metre Peter, Langford, Caddy, Stringer, all in a forward line together. Where do you sit on the short versus tall, and I guess even just that sort of whole, meta, quote unquote, James?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw that one in the Discord today. I know for sure that Peter Wright, that is off the table. I know some clubs did come asking the question, which is what happens when senior players get dropped from sides and there's interest. I know the line's been ruled through that, but I guess the idea overall, I think not this off-season, but potentially next off-season. I think we're obviously going to bring in Kako, who will fill that small forward need. It'll be interesting. I know there's another question in there around who do we think we might use our pick 8 on. I wouldn't be surprised if we use it on Armstrong, who's the number one key forward in the draft, to pair him with Caddy and build them as a bit of a twin towers over the years to come. So I feel like that once we have a look at this draft hand, Brad Scott will get a bit more of a feel of what he wants to do from a list and structure point of view when it comes to talls and smalls. But at the moment, I think we need 2 metre Peter. I know he was out of favour, but I'm pretty strong on him being in our best 22. And then I thought Harry Jones had a really good year, and I think it'd be silly for us to put him on the trade table just as he starts to show that he might be belonging at the highest level. Cox, there's obviously a big question mark over him. Whether there's any interest from other clubs, I'm not sure. But to answer that question, I think come this time next year, that could be a play. But I think now we have a look at our draft and we have a look at our list and see what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Like someone actually put in the Discord, and I thought about this. Like, Joe Danaher retires. Like, do Brisbane go and get another forward ruck? Because I think it's pretty fair to say that Danaher is the best forward ruck in the game, or was, and then you probably go to like a Luke Jackson probably next, maybe. Do they go, all right, let's just go get the next ruck forward, or is there a change of the way that Brisbane go about it? Obviously Chris Fagan's got a bit of relaxation time before they think about that, but yeah, I do wonder if there's going to be some interest there for other players. But yeah, the club did say that they're ruling big 7-seater out. And look, my heart would love for Peter to get back to the Crichton form that he had, but my head doesn't think it's going to happen, which is unfortunate because I feel like that shoulder injury is going to have ruined him. But yeah, I'd love to see a gun Peter right back and firing. It'd be nice. What do you think?
You think it's injury wise, or do you think there was something in when he ran through Cunningham from the Swans? He lost his fire in the belly, lost his aggression, or maybe a bit of both.
I think all of them, all the above, really. Like he I think he obviously had the issues kind of the injury and probably the mental side of that. And I said countless times throughout the year, like the way he plays. Marking at the highest point, a shoulder injury is the worst thing you can do if that's your game plan. Like, Gary Ablett played a career with a bunk shoulder because he was an inside mid. He didn't have to take contested marks. So I think that weighed on him, and then he goes and runs through Cunningham, and then I think that's a second layer to it. So, one, he was already fearful about hurting himself, but then he goes and hurts someone else. He's like, oh, God, now what do I do? And yeah, I've had a lot of people throughout the year ask me about Peter Wright, and including an ex-player or two who said, "How is a man that big unable to throw his weight around?" And I think it's clearly a mental thing. I think those are the two reasons for it. But with time, you can fix those things, but can it be fixed? I don't know. I think a lot of people are probably, chips out on Peter Wright at the moment. What about you, Joel?
If it was the right deal, I would definitely take it at this stage and have that sort of Caddy Jones forward line. As you said, James, I think look at trying to bring in another key forward if we can, and obviously get everything moving to get Harley Reid in at the end of next year.
We're skipping over that, aren't we?
Yeah,
Operation Harley.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was just trying to look at the draft hand to see what Brisbane had, and they've got a first rounder, but they don't have anything for a while. Because would you take a second rounder for Peter Wright? What if hypothetically he were?
Didn't we?
Yeah, we got him for a fourth, so it'd be a great deal. But he's now since obviously won a best and fairest, and obviously players like that are hard to come by for the right setup that needs someone like that. So he's probably worth a second rounder to the right club, I would say. I don't know.
I see Brisbane's first pick is 18. We've got 8 and 28. If you were to do right for pick 18, you could then use 18 and 28 to maybe climb up the draft order. Hypothetically, I don't know. I don't even know if 18's worth it for Peter Wright.
That's how I feel. I feel
I'd
like
take
they wouldn't pay 18. I
In a
don't
strong
know.
draft,
Yeah,
I'd take it.
but I definitely take it. And look, maybe they would, because there's elements of like Brisbane. You know, they've had their window open for the last couple of years, and maybe they're like, our window is open. We're getting Levi Ashcroft anyway. Fuck it, let's throw a pick at something. They're trying to replace a player that we've got and just try and win a few more flags.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll ask you boys just quickly about a couple of the players that we were rumoured with. We did speak about Finn McGuinness briefly. So Connor Stone's the other one we've been rumoured with, who's a GWS player. For anyone who's not keeping tabs on it all, utility type, has not played many games, injury prone over the last few seasons. So low expectations there. And then the one that upsets me the most, because, like, you know, I don't want to bash a guy too hard who may end up on the Essendon's list, but Josh Rotham.
Getting in early.
Mate. So I hit up a contact of mine who's in Perth, who's a big Eagles fan, loves his Eagles, this man. And I sent him a text today. I said, hey, mate, I'm doing a pod tonight. Can you sum up Josh Rotham in a sentence for me? This is what he said. Josh Rotham has the most damning blackmail known to man and has used it for the past 2 to 3 years to keep him in the team and contracted. That's all he said. I was like, thank you. That's all I need to know. I don't know. I feel like a guy who struggles to get in the team that's regularly getting pumped by 100 points every week, probably not the guy we want. Like,
This sounds like the perfect Jake Kelly replacement from what you're telling me. This sounds ideal.
Like, all right, is the plan just to get him in the VFL and, you know, have some experience? I don't know. I wrote down here, I did my quick research on him. He won the 2021 Grand Final Sprint. So next year on Grand Final Day, when we're not there, we can put Rotham in the sprint, which would be good. And then also the last 3 years, he's played 13 games. So I don't know, man. If you're getting dropped from that Eagles team, I really hope it's not the case. Like, I'm hoping that Matt Rose's thing is going to be plucking WA-based gems that we don't know about, not washed-up WA blokes that he might know from when he was at the Eagles. That's what I'm hoping is not the case.
Let's start some conspiracies. I was just trying to see whether Harley Reid happened to live with him. He doesn't. He lives with Oscar Allen. But Harley Reid is dating Yasmin Dersma. And maybe Yasmin Dersma is incredibly close with her Essendon brother and not her other brother. And maybe she wants to come to Melbourne to spend some more time with the rest of her family, you know. And Harley obviously has the pull for home as well. So I don't think Rotham adds to that at all.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to connect. Connect the dots.
I guess I said conspiracy, and I'm just kind of going from thing to thing.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to tell me that people are eating cats and dogs. I was like, here we go. Where's this going? Where's this going? Yeah. Look, I'm all for the Dersma clan bringing Harley Reid to Essendon. I'm not for washed players who can't get in a side that's not very good coming to the club. So sorry, Josh. You're not even on the list yet, and I've already got you my sights for next year. And then Jackson Pryor was the other one who you brilliantly said off the top, Joel, that you don't know who he is. I'll give you the red hot. He didn't play on Saturday for Brisbane, and he played 4 games this season, and he is from WA. So, yeah. Like I said, fellas, Preston Market and Aldi. That is the vibe for Essendon. And don't get me wrong, those are 2 great establishments, and you can find a bargain, and you can find a gem in there. But there's also a lot of shit there, so you got to look really hard to find the gems, rather than going to the good Coles at Northcote Plaza.
The one name that I thought on that sort of fringe player pick up for nothing, and I mentioned him maybe on the last pod that we did at the end of the season, was Caleb Daniel, in terms of a silky ball user off half back, all Australian in the past, but I haven't heard anything about Daniel from any clubs really. But I'm surprised we haven't at least asked the question. Maybe we have, but yeah, haven't heard anything around Caleb Daniel. Certainly not from us.
I saw something today about North potentially putting an offer to him. The other one that obviously North have targeted was Luke Parker, who, contrary to the us wanting youth, I thought his hypothetical leadership could have been really, really good. Also, all the memes of Luke Parker, in his doing his little afraid choke thing next to all their flag losses, they're great memes. It's just like Luke Parker doing his little shoulders up, and then like all the flags that he's lost. It's like, oh, who chokes? Who's the choker, Luke?
It would have been pretty.
I would have taken him.
It would have been pretty funny if we got Luke Parker and then we got rid of Dylan Shield and sent Dylan Shield back to Sydney.
Yeah, that would have
been pretty funny.
But yeah, I think Daniel is a potentially a good option, but you're right. There's not really any smoke there.
No, it's just got there's just a real damp, wet feel about this entire trade window. Not even just Essendon. I mean, as a whole, trade radio is really clutching at straws. And they clutch at some big straws.
Mostly advertisements, I think, but in between the ads, Adam Cooney's coming up with a 84-step trade.
An 84-step trade. Yeah.
Did you boys have any thoughts? I sort of answered Ken's question from my perspective before. Who should we target with pick 8? Is there a move to ensure we get the pick in before Kako bid, e.g. trade up or trade out if the bid comes? I spoke about Harry Armstrong before. I'm not sure if you boys have had a look at the draft or Kel Toomey's rankings or anything along those lines, but did you boys have any thoughts on who we should be targeting?
I've got one, but I don't know if we'll get to him. But I do like the look of Josh Smiley. I'm big on big midfielders, not 200-centimetre midfielders. I mean, more in your mod, your 190s vibe. And also the name Smiley is good. You can just picture the Essendon media team, smiles all round as he kicks a goal. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind that. But I can see your philosophy there, James, of, all right, let's go get two young key forwards and develop them together for the future. I don't mind that. Just quick Crichton update, boys. Leaderboard at round 5. Do you want to have a quick guess who's leading?
Zed Merritt.
Zed Merritt is currently second.
Maybe Ricky Martin.
No, I'll give you a clue. Had a really, really good first half of the year and then a really bad second half of the year. Much like the team.
Maybe Langers?
No.
Not Perko.
No. Perko's nowhere near this. You gonna be key?
Oh, Ben Mackay?
Yeah, Benny Mackay.
Yeah, justifying the dollars there, I reckon. Just max votes.
Yeah, max votes. There we go. Oh, Hep's took out some award. There we go. That's good to see. Fellas, anything else you'd like to add? Because I have run out of things to talk about this evening and the hay fever is burning my face and I want to go wash it and take a Zyrtec. Joel, any final thoughts from you, mate?
No.
No, actually, I got a quick one. I'll do just rapid fire. Jaden Davey, Will Setterfield, Sam Wiedemann. Yes, no on all three. So Jaden Davey, Joel, James. Yes.
Yes.
Joel, Will Setterfield. James.
No.
Sam Wiedemann.
No.
Come on, boys. That was clearly a yes for Weeds. We know that. Just to get back to what I was saying about Josh Rotham, I'd rather give Weeds a 2-year deal. That's
wow.
Just putting that out there.
Josh, the target is on your back, mate.
Yeah. Well, I need someone to go after now that Jake Kelly's, no longer at the club. Someone needs to be my whipping boy for 2025, and as it stands, it's a bloke who's not on the list. So.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure I'll find someone else if it's not him. Well, fellas, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in for a very laid-back look at the trade and draft window. We certainly aren't the experts in this field, but we thought you would do a bit of a debrief from us about how things going. Might pop up again over the next week or so if there's any big news or anything to talk about. Otherwise, maybe it'll just be a bit of a recap once it's all said and done. James, any final thoughts from you?
Oh, I suppose that it's sort of nice to see the club taking a tough stance on the likes of Stringer and Laverde and telling them how it is and not bowing down when, potentially in the past we have done that. So I'm certainly not against hearing that coming out of the club. It seems to be, it's sounding like maybe, we're moving the needle in the right direction when it comes to that. But obviously, the talking's done on the field and we've got a long way to go. But excited to see who we can pick up in this draft alongside Kako, and we spoke about it at the start of the pod. This is going to be Brad Scott's third season, and I know he's carrying 20 plus years of frustration, but Dodoro now gone, maybe things are starting to move in the right direction, and like we spoke about, if we can continue to have a little bit of patience, things might turn around quicker than what we think they might.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, fellas, enjoy watching the Crichton, if you are planning on watching the rest of the Crichton. I've just had it on the background here. I'm watching people get awards and whatnot. But thank you everyone for being with us this evening. Thanks everyone on the premium feed. We'll see you all soon. Go Bombers.